Hello and welcome to another episode of Circular Insights. My name is Lijin and I will be your host today. I'm really happy to be sat with our guest today because this topic has been something that's been on my mind for quite a while now, and especially with this triple planetary crisis of climate, pollution, and biological loss of diversity. Um, we actually really need to get a lot more solutions out there as quickly as possible. Not to mention that we have actually quite a tight deadline because the science tells us that it's actually by the end of this decade, which seems very long away, but actually it's only about 4 to 5 years away before we can actually avoid the worst of the climate effects. So if we need to take lots of action, now's the time to get a lot of solutions out there and rapidly replace out all these unsustainable products without actually compromising how people live their daily lives, earn their livelihoods, or access the goods and services that they need. So many people think that there is no feasible solutions out there yet, or maybe things are not affordable when you're going for sustainability. But let's be honest, society has bought more unaffordable things before. And at the same time, we also have founders with sustainable products that somehow believe that they may need to play small, stay local, and not really have their impact reach wider markets in a fast way. So, what's happening here? And how is brand a power tool that probably needs to be wielded a lot more if we are to replace out unsustainable daily uses with more sustainable ones in the next 4 to 5 years? I'm pleased to have this conversation today with Miss Cherry Kho, who has dedicated her career to helping legacy and family owned businesses grow and scale with purpose for over 2 decades. As brand experience director at Bluethumb, an integrated brand experience and design firm, she leads a team that's focused on meaningful growth, and their mission is to ensure that brands don't just expand, but create lasting connections with customers, franchisees, and their employees. Cherry has worked with a full range of brands from beloved names like Tapa King to well-known brands like Fritas and AP Cargo, as well as Fortune 500 companies. Her work blends strategic branding with international design, transforming retail spaces and digital presence to help businesses remain relevant across generations. Committed to knowledge sharing, Cherry will soon be beginning to teach brand experience design to C-suite decision makers at the Asian Institute of Management. She's also the author of Vision to Action, a guidebook that's published during the pandemic to help visionary business owners transform their local brands into global successes. This book is available at Fully Booked. Now, you can probably find a link in our podcast episode later on where you can go and access this guidebook. So please welcome Cherry Kho, Brand Experience Director of Bluethumb, a strategic force behind brands that grow with hearts and purpose. Welcome, Cherry.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Lijin.
Thanks so
Um,
much for joining me.
as you were talking about the triple bottom line, what came into my head was the rhinoceros, because they said that it's now extinct, the white rhinoceros. Have
Well,
you seen that article?
there will be more and more articles like such.
So,
Biological loss is growing, and it's not only in these big iconic mammals that very often people can relate to. If we just look at insects, actually, a lot of times when people talk about pesticides or fungicides, that chemical base, they think of like, oh, a lot of bees in like monoculture, agricultural land that's just dying away, pollinators dying
Mhm.
away. But the recent studies have actually found that even in national parks, which is supposed to be pristine, untouched, large numbers of insects have actually been dying off. And part of that is in the change in temperatures that we're already experiencing in our Earth today. So that is something that is quite worrying in some sense, because when we have less biological diversities, it means that we have less options to adapt to a very different climate. And how will those systems change when we no longer have those options? I think that's the main concern here. So
Yes.
yeah, great point to actually raise out. In any case, Cherry, I'd love to dive into our conversation today. What is actually happening here? As I mentioned, society has actually bought a lot more unaffordable things, things that maybe we don't even need, but just for that moment, we want it. And yet, when it comes to sustainability, seems to be this conflict. How can brand actually help us resolve that sort of conflict?
Yes. Well, like as you said, that a lot of insects are dying, but we're only aware of the rhinoceros because it's a bigger mammal. So perhaps it's also educating the public about what's happening and climate change. And maybe customers aren't demanding better sustainable packaging or ways to and and companies that are only interested about bottom line are focused on scaling but not on preserving the environment. So, well, we worked with a coffee brand. It's called Hinaleban, and their goal is to reforest Mindanao because, according to them or studies, is that there's only 2% left of rainforest in Mindanao. And part of their advocacy is every time you buy a bag of coffee, which isn't the cheapest coffee, but it's very, very good quality coffee, as in they got like a very high score in a international cupping contest. So every time you buy a bag, they would plant a tree, and they also help the farmers who are indigenous farmers plant their own food. So it's a very sustainable practice. And they also take care of the tree because trees don't actually grow like on their own. You still need to somehow care for them so they grow properly.
Mm,
So something like that. I think it has to be like a system or like a complete, but their packaging is actually not yet sustainable. That's the challenge, but they're turning the packaging into like purses. Like you could return the coffee pouch and they'll turn it into something usable so it doesn't end up in a landfill.
And that's something that I think a lot of brands actually go through, which is a journey in
Mhm.
sustainability. And there seems to be some sort of misconception that it is just a very clear, black and white. You're either sustainable or you're not sustainable. But then actually, there is a journey in their evolvement and how businesses actually include that into their business operation brings sustainability to life. So instead of it just being like a little CSR project on the side, you're actually putting it together with how your company creates revenue or how it deals with cost or how it deals with increasing the value of your assets and decreasing the risk from your liabilities. I think this is something that brands have to go through as a learning experience as well. And that, I guess, brings us to that question of why does
Mhm.
clarity in the brand become so powerful?
It really boils down to the founder and what he believes in and what his values are. Because if, like what you said, Na, it can't just be like a CSR or like a corporate social responsibility, which happens after you do your thing, right? Then at the end of the year, then you say, oh, okay, we're giving some things away, or we're maybe donating, or it has to be integrated into the system, not like a I'm sorry, but we'll plant some trees because I did affect climate change. Yeah, something like that. I think it shouldn't feel like it's, oh, I'm like a guilt feeling at the end. It should be during, and it is a journey. I think even founders are also learning as they go. But what's important is asking themselves, is what I'm doing contributing to the planet? Will there be something left for future generations, or are there better alternatives, right? Because it'll also help you in attracting the right team members who would want to support your cause.
Mm.
Or are they team members who also think like you and just thinks about bottom line and
Yeah, yeah.
promotion?
Something that you bring up here is really interesting in terms of attracting the right people to to come to you and actually work together. I think that's a very interesting point of where brand actually comes into play. It's not just about how you you project yourself to your customers, but it's also who are you attracting into your talent pool, into your collaborative sort of ecosystem, so that your business can actually achieve what it's trying to achieve.
Yes.
Yeah. And how does it also sort of like make it easier for, let's say, decisions to be made when you have a good, clear plan?
Well, most owners feel like everything's on their shoulders. Like they feel like they're the only ones making decisions. It's always their ideas. But then if they can share that load with other people, that other people believe in what they believe, then they can actually contribute to the vision.
Mm, mm,
Right. If the vision is very clear, and you can learn a lot because different generations have different perspectives and
mm.
they know what's right for their generation. So they'll be able to come up with better ideas that would suit their generation than the previous generations who didn't live in that time.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I mean, that cross generation, especially with your experience where you've been working with brands that have crossed generations, you can
Yes,
see.
yes. What got you here won't get you there.
Actually, why
Right.
did you
There's
decide
a
to work
saying.
with these cross generation brands? Why did you start working with this group?
I actually didn't know. It's like they were the ones that we were attracting.
Oh,
And I don't know if it's because I'm a Gen X. So we just get clients who are like older than me. And I kind of felt like it's a whole different generation. And I'm also trying to understand them and work with them. But there's definitely a gap. Like I think that millennials are probably better at understanding the Gen Zs than the Gen Xs. But they're
mm.
in a good spot now to understand us. Right?
Yeah,
Does
yeah.
that make sense?
I think it does. Yeah, yeah. And to see like brands that actually can last beyond generations. I mean, it really speaks to the
Mhm.
value that it continues to deliver to people. Be it in
Mhm.
terms of, I mean, foods that give a certain taste, or be it in terms of
Yeah.
certain experiences that we get from using certain products. There is a certain degree of
Mhm.
value that has been created, but then how that value is transpired over to another generation could be completely different in its approach.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So like for tapaking, diba? Home is their concept, right? Tapaking, the breakfast food that we have here. So basically the branding is about home. And we designed it so it was a baby boomer brand that resonated with the Gen X's. Then we designed it so that it can, resonate with the younger market, which was the millennials at that time, because we did it 5 years ago. But basically, home is what ties everybody. So whether you're a baby boomer, a Gen X, or a millennial working in the company, it's your understanding of home and how you would treat people when they visit your home. So if you work in a tapaking, whether you're the security guard or the president of the company, what does home mean to tapaking? They could be saying that, oh, we're using recycled materials, but it's not blatantly said. I mean, it's not in their marketing materials that, hey, we're contributing to the planet by using eco friendly materials, but they are using it because the owner is a millennial, or the second gen owner is a millennial, and she wanted to do it. So it's
Yeah.
founder led, or like the owner, it's based on her values.
Mm. And I think it also gels quite well with that brand that that they have already created as well, which is home. And the sort of idea of
Mm.
home and how you would like to treat people or life in general when they come to your home is something that if I understand it correctly, that there would be some degree of care, and that you are considerate to that other person or that other living being. And with that, the action of doing
Yes.
something that cares for the planet or cares
Yes.
for other living beings in this life is still
Yeah.
consistent with that understanding that when life
Mm.
or other person comes to your home, you would treat them with that degree of care and consideration, to be welcomed into your home.
We chose a warm light because their previous lighting was very cold, like using the fluorescent lights. It didn't have that warmth that we wanted. So that was the goal of the warm lighting, so that it's also better for the buy sustainable bulbs, but long-term wise, it's better for the planet.
Mm, mm. Yeah, it's quite interesting.
And
Like,
also for electricity.
hmm,
And also
hmm,
for electricity, like you're also not paying as much. Yes.
mm, mm. So it seems like when a brand becomes clearer in terms of what is the values that they stand for, it almost seems like decision making becomes easier and more, how to say, almost transferable to many layers within the organization. Is that a correct interpretation?
Also helps you hire the right people. Like it would be easier for you to spot someone who's a good fit for your culture
Mm, mm. And it's not only from
based on the
employees.
concept of home, which is, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
partners too. You're right.
Partners, investors, even if investors actually who are willing to put out the capital investment, but then they really contrast with this how you treat people, then it's easy to say that maybe this
Exactly.
investor isn't for us and that we need to be searching for somebody
Hmm.
else whose values and
Hmm.
align closer to this concept of home and that care and consideration and warmth that we want to bring through the brand.
Hmm.
Well,
Yes. And when you decide to scale, finding a franchise, if you decide to scale, is also going to be easier. And home is a universal concept. Not everybody has that definition of a home, because even home could be different for different people. But our home is a warm, accommodating Filipino way of delivering home, which we know that other countries, they value that when they come to the Philippines.
yeah, yeah. And it would seem that people who are looking for that type of feeling, not just in terms of the food, it creating that experience, it's also being in that
Mm.
space
Mm.
and being around the people
Yeah.
who also believe in that concept of a warm home, to actually
Mm.
gel with them. So you're sort of like using
Mm.
these many levers to draw in attract the right
Yeah.
people to the business.
Yes, yes.
Wow. Wow.
And eventually, even choosing products that you decide to partner with, because they also sell products like other products in the store that aren't theirs. So they would choose, like, they have this thing called kangkong chips. It's like a water vegetable yeah, so something wholesome, right? You would choose wholesome partners or
Mm,
suppliers to put in your store, even if it doesn't carry your brand, because it's sold within your premises, right? It should somehow contribute to your brand.
right, right. So by having brand clarity, it helps making decisions on who else to sort of represent in your space or represent with your brand or stand beside your brand becomes
Yeah.
easier as well.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess in retrospect, sort of thinking of certain brands that maybe in the past people really loved, but then over time they sort of started adding more and more different products into the company, and then it started getting a bit like confused, right? You're not quite sure what they're doing,
Mhm.
what they stand for. I think that's the sort of flip side to what unclarity or non-clarity creates, whereby people would be unsure, like, oh, I'm not sure if I should go to that place for that experience or that feeling or that particular product anymore because there's just so much things all lumped in together and seems to just
Mhm.
follow the trends, right? I'm sort of thinking of my childhood
Yes.
bubble tea shop, whereby, we used to
Yes.
just go for that thing. And then all of a sudden they were also doing like additional wafers, and then they were doing retail sales of snacks that didn't really gel with the brand. And then all of a sudden there were like toys and
Mhm.
games on the side as well. And you're like, okay, I'm not sure how
Mhm.
this works together. And then eventually we stopped going.
Exactly. Yes, it doesn't feel like it's you anymore. So in the past, they got you, but they evolved into something that, yeah, that wasn't. So that's also something that we do as brand designers. We try to think of each generation. So without offending the previous generation, we try to link it that they feel that the brand evolved, but they don't feel like it's totally not them anymore.
Because it
Yeah,
can be some sort of feeling of almost abandonment, right? As the user,
exactly.
where like you're no longer wanted or needed by this group that you initially associated yourself to.
Yeah, associated and supported with your time and your money.
So I guess that leads to the next question then, which is, there are founders who believe that they should stay small in order to, stay true to the cause, and therefore are almost avoidant of the topic of scaling. And as we opened this episode with the premise that we actually don't have that much more time to replace
Mm,
out all of these unsustainable products that we use on a day-to-day basis, um,
mm,
what should, these founders or CEOs with sustainable products, really be asking themselves in order to to number one, get clarity on why they feel they should just stay small. And you've worked with many companies who are trying to
mm.
scale. So what is your thoughts on that?
Well, we can't really force them to scale because there are some that really just want to stay small, and I think it's okay if you decide to be a destination brand, right? Like you want to be the known brand in your locality, right? But then if like but I think what they should be asking themselves is if they don't scale, what what loss would that be to the planet? I
Or
think that
whatever
if
purpose that
they
they're
ask them,
serving.
yeah, exactly. Because if they stay small, then only a few people would benefit, right? But since they already have a good product, why not scale? I mean, what's keeping them from keeping it a secret? I mean, they already worked this hard to make it sustainable, a good quality product, right? It's probably their own aversion to being big. Maybe you're like what you said, that if they're not hurting the planet, then what's wrong with scaling? Right?
That's very like a strong point to actually come across. And it's not only for our planet, it could be for various impact purposes as well, whereby there are businesses, let's say, whom deliver a lot of social impact, working with certain vulnerable groups or disadvantaged groups, or
Right.
maybe people with special abilities. And by not scaling, they're essentially, like you said, they can't reach all those people who maybe are just waiting for their product or service to arrive on their shores and to be able to
Mm,
serve them.
yes, yes, that's
Wow.
true.
That's a powerful question to actually keep in mind, which is what would happen if you don't scale? What would happen if you
Mm,
don't scale? Yeah. So why is surface branding? I mean, this is something that you introduced to me actually. Why is surface branding failing for Southeast Asian brands? And maybe for our listeners who are not so familiar with these terms, like what is surface branding to begin with, and why is it failing Southeast Asian
mm.
brands?
Okay, so most businesses, I'm speaking for the ones locally first.
Yeah.
I noticed is that they go into business but they would think of a name on the fly, like, oh, they need to register a name quickly. So they'll just use some numbers in their birthday or maybe the dad's name or the wife's name, put something together. Just for the purpose of complying and having a way to identify their business. So that is branding on its own, right? And they would just ask a graphic designer to execute it using their favorite colors. So that would be surface compliance branding, which would work if you need to have something read. The question is do we want to be remembered? Because names with numbers and, or when you put them together but they don't mean anything, they're harder to remember. They don't have that much impact.
Mm.
And that's where I would say connect it to your values. First, think about what your values are and what impact to make, and the name would add to your to the meaning or to the story.
Right. So because it is more difficult for people to associate a certain value to names that haven't been sort of like thought through,
Mm.
which is where you say is more sort of like just for the purpose of registering or complying
Mm.
to having those things. People have names or images or things like that that don't actually gel together, and it makes it very confusing, therefore, for people to
Mhm.
interact with this what they stand for. So, Jerry, if I understand you correctly, is that apart from doing these sort of necessary parts of the having the business, you're saying that if they had more thought into how the brand actually came about or grew, and what values they stand for, then it could actually lead to better outcomes for the business.
Yes. Having like connecting the value or the what makes their products really good, and how it impacts people or planet. Thinking about those things first before they think of the name. Because like if they come up with a name that feels rushed or they come up with branding that feels rushed, then it would also affect people's impression of the products that they carry. So I'm like this. Like when I see like a store signage or like from the facade, like a coffee shop, because there are so many coffee shops, right? I would judge it based on how it looks if I would want to try it. So if it feels like, I mean, it's okay to be a mom and pop, but have like a meaning to the brand. Like usually if it's just a name, like I don't know, Ted's Coffee, it doesn't really say anything unless maybe the graphics has something there, like maybe it looks organic
Mm,
or
mm,
I don't know. I guess it just has to have something because there's just so many competitors. So commodity, if you're selling a commodity product, you need to find ways to differentiate yourself through your experience. And the experience is basically what people will see, what people will touch, what they would smell and
mm. How
feel.
they feel.
Yeah.
Mm. And so like this is more of like a integrative type of design or systems thinking type of design to brand development.
Yes, definitely. But it also captures your audience more than if you just invested in surface branding. Like if we go back to that word surface, like you only invested in maybe some graphic design or a nice logo, but you didn't think about like a better like a cup, like a very special cup. I don't know if you remember the brand Max Brenner. They used to have these cups that they called hug mugs, sorry, hug mugs. So they like when you hold the cup, it's like you're hugging it. It like they designed it that way. So it really feels like you're being comforted whenever you drink from their mugs. It's like you need
Mm,
two hands to hold it, and they call it a hug mug. So they even gave it a term, and they designed the mug to be that special.
And it's so that they could provide that type of experience for people where they feel comforted by the product.
Yes.
Wow.
And maybe if like they added another layer to it, like it's made by maybe PWDs or maybe um, they get the material from the mountains or something. I don't know, like adding those stories kind of give it more richness. Nah, you feel like you're not just getting a cup of coffee.
You actually get to be part of their tribe in a way that you can
Mm,
associate yourself with them because you believe in certain things that are
yes,
similar.
yes.
It actually like gives me a lot of like reflection in terms of how a lot of sustainable products have been promoted for many years. Of course, now there's a new breed of sustainable products out there that have evolved. But traditionally, a lot of sustainability products or services or efforts seem to lie on the basis that of that feeling of guilt that, we should feel bad for not using their product because by using the default or the incumbent products, basically we're creating all this bad in the world and we should feel bad about ourselves. And therefore, when you approach these sustainable products, it's almost like you're trying to redeem yourself from all the bad that you've done. And
Yeah.
and that doesn't, I mean, in that case, I mean, the experience that a user would have is not starting off quite on a positive foot with in that
Yeah.
case.
No, it's not. And maybe it's a psychology tactic.
Mm,
Because maybe like in our society, raising your voice or maybe, things like that would get people's attention more than if you did it in a more like what you said a while ago, in a more encouraging way. But I think that would only apply if people are aware of what's happening. And maybe they're reaching out to people who are unaware. That's why they need to use tactics like that.
But and it brings a lot of parallel to even my own parenting journey. I'm a parent of two
Mhm.
under fives, and
Oh.
very often in that parenting journey,
Mhm.
people do actually talk about different approaches to parenting, whereby we could
Mhm.
still achieve the same outcome of, let's say, the child behaving in a certain way, but is that actually born out of command and control?
Yeah.
Whereby it's almost forced onto the child to behave in a certain manner, and that the care and compassion that is given to them is conditional to their
Mm.
behaving in a certain way,
Mhm.
versus a different approach to parenting, whereby the empathy and the compassion is first modeled and given to the child, so that what you're getting in terms of the behavior that follows is coming from
Mhm.
cooperation and trust and
And love.
connection and
Mm.
love.
Yes.
So very different approaches. Outcome may
Mhm.
look the same, but it definitely feels completely different, both in
Mhm.
executing those strategies as well as being on the receiving end of those
Mhm.
strategies. And so when you were talking about, how when people start thinking about their brands, the outcome, of course, that businesses will eventually need to have is that it's profitable so that they can continue to exist. Um,
Mhm.
but also is what is that purpose behind their existence, and how do you want to achieve that purpose of existence? Is it something that is you're going to carry the character of a more command and control or forced or guilt-led type of approach to it? Or are
Mhm.
you going to carry that notion that that empathy, that reconnection to the needs that people have? I think
Yeah.
recognizing that
Um,
there's nothing to be guilty about needing to
yes.
needing to eat, for example, or needing to
Mm.
get to use certain things, and
Mm.
then trying to find a way to get those things in a better way is a very different feeling.
Yes, exactly. It should just feel like it's a way of life, right?
Mm, mm,
Going back to the brand, the coffee brand that where you buy a bag and they plant a tree. I forgot to tell you that the name Hineleban, well, that came from them. The meaning of it is mother tree.
mm,
And then and when you say it's a mother tree, it's like it sustains other animals and plants. So we illustrated that on the packaging, and the illustration has hidden animals that are endemic to Mindanao. And what this means is that it's like a gentler approach of letting people know that every bag that you purchase goes to a tree being planted, which can help like
Mm.
sustain other animals and plants. And they also learn about, oh, what animals are existing in the Philippines, because we're so like if you watch
Detached.
yeah, we're so detached. Like we know what penguins are or polar bears are more than our own animals here in the Philippines.
And that sort of like creates the connection really to what the brand stands for. It's not just about great coffee, it's about how to achieve great coffee while also creating an opportunity for life to thrive
Yeah,
together.
exactly.
Mm, mm,
Yeah, because if you're gonna sell coffee, I mean, why not bring the Philippines with you,
mm.
right? I
And, and
mean,
and when you have that sort of brand clarity, I guess. I mean, of course, I'm not saying that this particular brand is going in this direction, but just as sort of
mm,
an example of what you were talking about just now, it would also become easier if, let's say, they were to branch out away from the Philippines, to work in other places where they have localized coffee productions. And that could be reflected in their packaging as well. It's still the mother tree, maybe
mm,
not necessarily the same tree, but it's still a mother tree that can support that life of those local species. And therefore, in the new market that they reach out to, they would also play that same role of drawing
mm,
attention to local species and the role that, putting back certain mother species would help in supporting life in their
yeah.
locality.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
That's a wonderful idea. Yeah, why not?
Which brings me to the next question, actually, Cherry, because very often when companies want to, get into expanding, franchising is something that they would do. And what do franchise brands tend to get wrong before scaling?
Okay. Well, I think locally, what they tend to get wrong is they don't invest in getting their story clear. Like people probably appreciate the product, so they
Mm,
like the taste, or maybe it's really affordable, or maybe they're in the right location, so they're accessible. And people like support them in that sense because they're convenient.
mm,
But perhaps if there is a competitor that does decide to come in that has all those elements
mm,
and they have a good name or a look that resonates with the person buying them, like they're not just buying them because they're hungry, but they're buying them because they connect with the branding, like
mm,
it fits their style, like what you said, like a bubble tea. And if they're
mm,
walking around with this cup that that fits their style, it gives them that confidence versus a bubble tea that just quenches their thirst, but it's not something that they'd really be comfortable being seen in public with. So the other one, like you got free advertising, or
mm,
people might even take pictures with it, right? The packaging, or they might even gift it to people. I mean, like the mileage goes so much longer and wider, and if you invest in things like that. Or maybe the story, maybe they bought it from somebody who's a PWD at the store.
mm, mm, mm. So the story is something that franchise, before you even talk about expanding and scaling, getting clear on that story is what's going to help, number one, differentiate you in the eyes of your users. And earlier also you did say also it also attracts the right type of people to then become your franchisee because in a way, in a different market, you are putting the hands of your brand, your baby into
Mhm.
their hands to represent you correctly.
Yes. And if it's just about bottom line, then they're not going to protect your brand.
Mm,
So let's say your brand is about home or home cooked food. but they decide to put you in a location where they don't value home cooked food, or maybe it's just not aligned to that, so it wouldn't contribute to your image, right?
Mm, mm. Or if they start replacing certain, let's say, ingredients for the
Yeah.
so-called more affordable alternative, but it no longer has that home cooked feel to it or taste to it or look to it anymore because of
Yeah.
those replacements, then you
Mm.
gradually created more people out there to dilute what you stand for.
Yes, or you hire somebody that isn't kind to your customers, just, doesn't make eye contact, doesn't say hello, just, gives them their food and walks away. So,
Oh, right, right. So for a lot of sustainable products, a lot of them are still like quite localized, I'd say. Not many actually expand beyond multiple markets. So your advice would be that if they are thinking of expanding, they would need to get very clear on that story that holds the brand identity together. Is that the first
Mhm.
step? Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And when you do that, like what you said a while ago, you can actually scale beyond your country.
Mm,
I mean,
mm.
if they are universal qualities that other countries share, then it's something that you could scale.
Mm,
You're
mm. So
not
that, like the
just,
feeling of home or the
yeah,
feeling of the mother tree creating life. Um,
exactly.
So yeah, very often I think we tend to find people who are in the sustainability realm who like have created great product, and they feel that the product should speak for itself,
Mhm.
because it's so good
Always.
quality. Therefore, people should appreciate it and be willing to pay that price for it. And then
Exactly.
it's met with a lot of disappointment and frustration when the market does not respond that way. So,
Yes, and that's actually what keeps them small. So maybe
oh.
it's not them wanting to stay small, but because of that mindset, it's what's keeping them small. So I know somebody who's like that.
So how do
I
you
mean,
work with
yeah.
companies at that if they do realize that that is something that is keeping them small, how would you work with these companies?
Well, right now, if they would agree to it, I would say let's do a brand review. Like, let's look at your current assets, like
Mm,
how you're currently portraying yourself.
mm,
So I'll talk about the brand that I mean, my friend. So it's like a vegetarian restaurant.
okay.
And so it's been with her for over 10 years, and she really, really believes in the quality of the food, and it's really good, but she's doing everything herself. Like, so the menu, she does it herself,
Mm.
the photography, things like that. It's not her expertise, but she feels that, once people try the food, they'll see the difference, right? Or they'll feel the difference. But the question is, how do you even get them into your store?
That's true. If they didn't even know you exist, there is almost
Mm,
zero chance they would even try your food.
yes, or if the pictures don't attract them. And nowadays, like pictures are very important, or even not just pictures, it should be a video of like pouring the gravy. Like people want things moving now. So if you don't invest in that, like then there's other brands that are doing that people would catch other people's attention.
And even if those other brands who were doing that have lower quality in terms of the vegetarian food that is served or the nutritional
Yeah.
value that it has, or the backstory of how those foods were connected to local producers who really put in the time to make sure that the plants that is grown actually has high, nutritional content to it. All of
Mm,
that doesn't get translated over if
yes.
she doesn't invest in that.
Yeah, she doesn't communicate it well enough.
Mm, mm. So it seems like founder self-alignment is that working within that founder realm is something that is very important. Um,
Hmm. Yeah, and too much belief in the product. I guess like I know people think that marketing or is too loud, but I think that we need to invest in authentic marketing. It's not just always like doing promos or buy one take one, or it shouldn't just be price focused or product focused,
mm,
because let's face it, we have similar products with other people, but the question is, how are we packaging it to make it more appealing or worth people's time and money
and something that
over others?
I
Yeah.
think you shared with me was that you have to design your brand not like a wrapper. So when you're saying packaging, there might be the thinking that it's like a wrapper, but that's not what you're talking about there.
No, no. I think it's every interaction that people experience you. So as soon as they walk in the door, how do they feel? What do they smell? What do they see? What do they hear?
Mm,
So
mm,
even the ambient music, like if it relaxes them, I mean, if that's the goal of your brand to relax people, then what kind of music are you playing?
So you almost have to design your brand like a web, not so much a wrapper.
Exactly.
So where would like piece of purpose actually show up in the business? I mean, of course, there's the outward facing part for your customers and clients, but where else does purpose actually show up that will make it true to your brand?
Mm,
Like
well,
like sourcing. Mm,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, sourcing. That adds to the story. So, um, not all businesses start out knowing where to source, but as they get to know themselves, then maybe they could also improve their sourcing. Like maybe in the
mm,
beginning, when they started, they used to get it from the market. But as they understood themselves and their values got clearer, then maybe it's about partnering with farmers, right? So that you could actually support their livelihood rather than go through a lot of middlemen. And if you have and that could be part of your story. So,
mm,
or like maybe biodynamic farming, like, or organic farming could add another layer if that, resonates with you. You want more nutritious produce versus you just get it from somewhere where you don't even know what inputs they put into the ground.
mm.
So, and then attracting the right audience that also values that, because you might be putting in so much effort, but the market or the way that you're branding yourself only attracts people who want affordable food
Mm.
that
So if you're caught in a situation where quite frustrated that you're not actually getting the people who appreciate the product and willing to pay the price that it is, there's
Hmm.
probably something in the way that you're communicating your brand that is not gelling sufficiently to attract the right people.
Yes,
I
yes,
see.
or you're not in the right locations, or you might be
Yeah.
in the right locations but you're not packaged properly.
Yeah. You're not showing up in their radar.
Yes.
Right, right. So it seems like the founder alignment to the brand is actually very important lever for someone to have.
Hmm.
Okay, right. Thanks so much, Sherry, for explaining that. I really like how our discussion started off with how clarity in the brand actually becomes so important to create that trust, the movement, and action, right? Because in business, that momentum of taking action is something very necessary to help grow the business and keep it going across different generations as well. And how you communicate through the brand who you are, why you matter, why what you're pursuing, this purpose that you're pursuing even matters in the first place, and how you could resonate with people by communicating that authentically.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So I guess last off,
Really?
how would people find you if they're interested to work with you, be it as clients or be it as talents who would be interested to partake in what you do, Cherry? Where can they find you?
Oh, we're on Facebook and Instagram, and we're also on LinkedIn. Yes, definitely. I'd love to work with owners who have a very good, like they really believe in that they have a quality product. Um, I think that it's a waste of like you invested so much in coming up with a quality product, but you're not branding it properly to really express the story that went behind it because it's like your best kept secret. Um, and yeah, and we shouldn't be hiding. Like, if we did spend so much time, making our product really good, why are we not, packaging it in a way that also communicates that,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Um, Yeah, so I'd love to work with people who believe in that and they want to, as what you said, do something that is like a system and scale it beyond your country. If we could bring brand like Filipino products to other countries, or maybe or maybe like create systems like what you said with Hinalaban, like do that in another country. I'd
Mm,
love to do that. That would be amazing. And it's a matter of like localizing it, right? Something that is universal yet local.
mm, mm. And it comes back to that value system that you hold that can appeal to multiple markets, even
Mhm.
though it might be slightly different in terms of like the actual sourcing or the actual packaging or how it looks beautiful. There's a consistency in a way.
Mm,
So, do you
yeah.
have a final message to founders that you would like to share?
Yeah, so I think that, well, maybe for the ones who are too obsessed with their product, but they're not seeing that, like design can contribute to making their product, be seen as quality as it really is, right? Um, and design is not actually just the wrapper, but even like how your product is shaped. Like you could see the Coke bottle, right? They really invested in a unique shape for their packaging. Or in Starbucks, they trained their people to have that local cafe vibe, even if they're like a chain all over the world. Finding about how you want to do it, because there are lots of similar products, but you are unique. I mean, 8 billion people, we come from different families and we have different perspectives and experiences. So why not translate that into your brand and tell a different story?
Mm, mm. Those are wonderful messages to our founders, especially most of our audience here are working with brands with a mission. Um,
Mm,
and it almost feels like you're you're telling us to allow our character and experiences to fill in that gap between the performance of the product and the resonance with the market. And the more that we're able to allow that character to show through, the easier it will be for us to find the right clients that need the product for its performance, but also
mhm.
that gel with us on the values that we stand for in order to do it. And
Yes.
and that's what's going to drive more rapid change because you find the people who are more ready to actually make that change with you.
Mm. And they won't just buy you for the accessibility, but they'll buy you when they think of giving a gift to someone, or maybe if they have like an office event, they would order you to serve their guests. So it goes a long way. I mean, if you can get them on a personal level, then it could extend to other things where they would also think of your brand.
Right. Thank you very much, Sherry, for sharing with us how this is the brand power tool. And it's just waiting for people to be picked up, especially to those who have, spent so much time making the solution to solve a lot of the problems that we're facing, be it for the environment part of it or from the social perspective. It's not just physical products. It could also be systems that you put in place, experiences that help people change their habits to participate in this fast evolving world where, let's face it, adaptation to a new system is happening, right? Whether we like it or not. AI is
Yeah.
changing, technology is changing, the physical environment is changing through the climate, through the biodiversity changes, through food choices and everything. There's so much change in the world, and yet when we get clear on what it is that we stand for, you can find
Mhm.
a sort of like peace with those change, and those people who resonate with you will find that type of peace coming to your brand as well.
That's beautiful. Yes.
Right. Thank you very much again, Cherry, for sharing your thoughts, your experiences, and wisdom with us. Really look forward to catching up at another time. Thank you again for your time today.
Thank you. I really enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Cherry.